Taiwanese companies are known for great products at good value, from the world's most advanced chips to bikes tailored to cycling champions. Fantastic if you're a customer or a shareholder. Less so if you're the one making them. Because Taiwan's work culture has a reputation. Efficient, demanding, and not exactly famous for work-life balance. And that begs the question, is this pressure a competitive advantage or something that eventually burns people out? So, I've seen this question from a few different distances, as a customer, as a worker, and from the outside. I'm seriously, Taiwan matters. I grew up in Taiwan, moved to the US in my teens, and now live in Europe. My most intense experience working with Taiwanese was actually in the US, at a startup. The company was funded by American venture capital, but the founders were Taiwanese and Chinese. The team was about 200 people, roughly half Americans and half Taiwanese or Chinese immigrants. Before I joined, my father warned me. Taiwanese and Chinese bosses work people very hard. Don't do it. I didn't listen. Even though my direct bosses were Americans, the pressure never really stopped because the founders never stopped working. Dinner at the office was common, but at least they always ordered from the best Asian restaurants in town. Weekends weren't required, but they were quietly expected when things slipped. What stood out wasn't productivity. Most of us were exhausted after a few intense hours anyway. What stood out was the pressure to stay, sometimes just to be seen staying, even if you were just standing by the foosball table. It made me wonder, if this kind of pressure shows up inside a US company with American funding and local employees, then the pressure isn't coming from the system. It's coming from the people and the work culture they bring with them. So what does that mean for people working inside that culture back in Taiwan? A huge part of Taiwan's economy runs on small and medium-sized businesses you'll probably never hear about. And it's here you often see how hard entrepreneurs push themselves. One time, I was shopping for curtains with my parents. After dinner, they decided to just get it done. I said, "It's almost 9. Who is still open?" They said, "It's only 9. Who closes this early?" Sure enough, a small shop nearby was open, very open. The whole family was there, watching TV, doing homework, snacking, and happy to help us pick fabric. If it weren't for the fabric rolls, you might think you'd walked into someone's living room. I was half shocked by how long their workday was, and half relieved that I wasn't their kid, being quietly groomed to take over the shop someday. And this didn't feel unusual. I'm not assuming these entrepreneurs love working long days, but there's a quiet dignity in finding small ways to make a hard living a little more enjoyable. But it's one thing when entrepreneurs push themselves. It's another when the same expectations show up inside larger companies, where the cost of saying no is much higher. TSMC is often in the news. This is just one glimpse from what I've seen of how it operates behind the headlines. I know people who've worked there, including a young, highly educated relative who is still there, in management. TSMC attracts the best and the brightest. It also asks for a level of commitment that's considered extreme, even by Taiwanese standards. To keep things running at full speed, the company operates on continuous coverage, not just in factories, but in some cases, even in research and management. That can mean irregular shifts, days, nights, then back again. The kind of rhythm that quietly throws off your internal clock until it becomes easier to rest than to build much of a life around it. And yet, people still go. My father warned me to avoid Taiwanese bosses, but in Taiwan, the advice might sound very different. Suffering builds character, so you might as well do it at the top. Now TSMC is building major plants in the US and in Europe. Some parts of that success will travel easily. The machines, the processes, the capital. The harder question is what doesn't travel as easily. The habits, the expectations, and ways of working you don't see on a factory tour. If TSMC represents Taiwan under the global spotlight today, Giant represents an earlier chapter. On paper, it looks like a Cinderella story. Founded in the early 1970s, Giant built bikes for Western brands, and eventually became the world's largest bicycle company. But Giant's story only makes sense in the context of what Taiwan was going through. I grew up in the 1970s. Back then, Taiwan made cheap things. Clothes, toys, household goods, including bikes, often poorly standardized, parts that didn't always fit. That's where Giant began. It started by doing what Taiwan did then, manufacturing for others. But it also did something more important. It helped impose order, better quality control, shared specifications, ways of working that let the industry function as a system, not just a collection of factories. That lift helped Giant land its biggest customer at the time, Schwinn, the dominant bicycle brand in the US. But the 1970s weren't a stable decade for Taiwan. The global oil crisis led to rolling blackouts. I was constantly reminded to turn off lights when leaving a room. And then a shock to the system, even for a kid. The United States severing diplomatic ties with Taiwan. I remember protests in the streets, anger and confusion. In the 1980s, China opened its doors for business. Suddenly, Taiwan wasn't cheap enough anymore. Manufacturing moved to China. For Giant, that was the moment of truth. So it did what it had to do to survive. It launched its own brand. I still remember seeing Giant's ads everywhere. And that was the first time I could remember a Taiwanese product wasn't just affordable. It was something kids wanted. Years later, Giant's founder, King Liu, put it in this way. When you abandon traditional price cutting, you realize that your mind is freer and your thinking more creative. That line explains a lot, not just about Giant, but about Taiwan. When the world moves on, no one checks if you were treated fairly. You either redefine your value or you disappear. Giant didn't succeed by going alone. What I've heard is that it did something unusual. It shared know-how, even with other Taiwanese OEM competitors. Not out of kindness, but because Taiwan needed to compete as a whole. Raising the floor mattered more than protecting one company's edge. That approach worked. Today, brands from around the world come to Taiwan every year for a Taichung Bike Week, not to deal with one company, but to do business across an entire ecosystem. And honestly, this is part of why I think Taiwan is so strong in chips too. Semiconductors aren't just about technology. They reward entrepreneurship, long-term hard work, and a community-minded instinct to build trust across an ecosystem. That combination is very much in Taiwan's wheelhouse. But success at that scale doesn't just bring pressure. It brings responsibility and a chance to lead, not just perform. And that's not theoretical. It shows up in real, concrete ways. In 2025, U.S. Customs and Border Protection issued a withhold release order on bicycles made by Giant over concerns related to labor conditions involving migrant workers. What matters here isn't just Giant, or even one industry. It's the reminder this moment carries. As Taiwan grows into its position as a developed economy, being a good place to work has to matter as much to companies as being profitable. From where I sit, that pressure is clearly visible. People complain openly online about work culture and low pay, and housing prices are clearly out of sync with average salaries. I've even made a video showing that, by some measures, Taipei's housing-to-wage ratio is worse than that of New York or London. I have nieces, nephews, and friends still living with their parents, not because they want to, but because there isn't much choice. Living with your parents doesn't exactly help with work-life balance, or life, period. And with an aging population and one of the world's lowest birth rates, Taiwan cannot afford to burn its workforce out. It's not just unfair, it's impractical. But this is also the kind of problem Taiwan has proven it can tackle. This is a society that turned an authoritarian system into a working democracy, that legalized same-sex marriage through activism, voting, and a truly impressive amount of arguing. Compared to that, rethinking work culture and conditions isn't a moral crisis. It's a policy problem, one that involves both government and the companies people actually work for. Change can be frustratingly slow, even when it feels like common sense. But if there's one thing I'm not worried about, it's Taiwanese people staying quiet. If something isn't working, people will say something. Then they say again and again, until it does. Please subscribe and check out our other videos.